Filming this video is such a last minute decision. Why am I so low down? Okay, that's better. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Bella. I'm so excited for today's video. Today I will be wrapping up all of my favourite books of 2022. Excuse my voice, I literally just woke up and got up to film this video. So I've got 10 books here that I can tell you about that were my favourite books of this year. And also my hair's a bit yucky, so we're just gonna ignore that. 3 of them are on Kindle and then the rest of them are paperbacks. So excited to go through this. Some of these I read like ages ago and I forgot that they were read in 2022. So in no particular order. One of my favourite romance books this year was The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I listened to this book on audio and I had no clue that I would love it so much. The relationship in this book was absolutely amazing. I was obsessed with it. It's about Bree and Nathan. Nathan is a famous American football player and Bree's a ballet teacher. They've been best friends since high school, and something happens and they have to end up fake dating. I loved it the whole time. I was obsessed with them. I loved that book. I gave that book 5 stars. It was amazing. Honestly, I think about it every day. I love The Cheat Sheet. The fake dating, the romance, everything, friends to lovers, chef's kiss. It was so good. As you can tell, I can't stop talking about it. And I definitely want to read more of Sarah Adams' books in 2023. Okay, the next book that I read on Kindle was Indigo Ridge by Daphne Perry. And it's the first book in the Eden series. I know a lot of people's favourite book in this series is the second one, Juniper Hill. But personally, I really loved the first one a lot. I don't have it in paperback. I only have the third one in paperback. But I loved this series. I especially loved the first book. I don't know what it was about it, but everything, I loved it. So this book's about Griffin and Winslow. Griffin, he's in Eden, so he's part of the family that basically, they originally founded this town. So it's a small town romance. So good. And Winslow comes in and she's the new chief of police. And one day she and Griffin meet in a bar and they hook up because he thinks that she's just a tourist because he doesn't usually hook up with locals. But then, you find out she's the chief of police and relationship sort of forms. But the whole time that the romance is going on, there's also this murder mystery going on, which I think is one of my favourite things about that series, is that it's not just a romance series. You get this whole murder mystery, all these mysteries of things happening, and I'm just obsessed, and I'm so excited for the 4th book to come out. I don't know when it comes out. I think it's early January, but I am so excited. I cannot even tell you. And I gave that book 5 stars. 5 billion stars. Winslow and Griffin, everything about that was amazing. This next book is a book that I read way early on in the year. I don't know, I think it was March or something. But it is Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. Now this book is more of I think it's a retelling of a story from the Bible. I'm not too sure on that one. All of Francine Rivers' book have some biblical, I don't know, story throughout it. But I really loved this book, Redeeming Love. It was so good. And it's set in I don't know, early, in the old days in America. It's about Angel and Michael Hosea. So I think it's this book of Hosea or something in the Bible. I'm not too sure. And she's a prostitute. She's been a prostitute since she was little. She was sold into this world. But then one day Michael sees her one day and he's I'm gonna marry that girl. So he turns up to the brothel every day and it's I'm gonna marry you, we're gonna get married. The entirety of this book, I loved it. I don't think I've ever loved a book this much. It was amazing. Oh my god, Michael and Angel. There's also a movie starring Abigail Cowan who was in the Winx saga. But I definitely want to read more of Francine Rivers because if they're anything like this book, I know I'm gonna love them. Okay, and now I'm gonna get started on the books that I actually have the physical copies of. So one book that was really surprising to me that I really enjoyed it was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This year I've also read Daisy Jones and One True Loves, and honestly I wasn't the biggest fan of either, but this one I absolutely ate this book up. It was so good. I don't know what it was about this one. This book's about Evelyn Hugo and her life being an actress. She was she was a famous actress in Hollywood, and she had 7 husbands, so it's sort of telling her story through Hollywood, through marrying all these guys. I found it was just so interesting, and it's really hard to believe that this woman was not real. You get Evelyn's perspective throughout her story, and you're also following this reporter, journalist person who's telling her story, and so you get like 2 storylines, but it is amazing. Go read this. I really love this book and I recommend this. Like, read it. If you're not too sure about Taylor Jenkins Reid, read this one or Daisy Jones and the Six, because I know those 2 are like the 2 favourites. And then the most recent book in this little pile of books I have is The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I picked this book up on like a whim, completely spontaneous. I just picked it up and I love this book. And I just found out that there's going to be like a second installment about the main character in this's friend, which is coming out in the new year, so I've already got it pre-ordered. We all know. This book is about Jess and River. River is a scientist, like genetic scientist, and Jess is just like, she's like a number genius. They both go to the same coffee shop and she always sees River in the coffee shop until one day she hears about this dating app that he's made where you send in like your genetic material, like you do like a swab, then they analyze it and they can basically find your soulmate match. And she does this, and then her soulmate ends up being River, but they don't like each other very much. So then it turns into this whole like fake dating thing. We need a fake date for the companies. It's so good. She is a mum in this. She's a single mum, so she's got a kid, and the kid was everything. I mean, honestly, I'm one of those people who loves kids in books, but this book, I read this in 2 days. I swear, I was in a book slump, and then I picked this up, and it was like a 2-day thing, and I've had this book sitting on my shelf for 2 years. And I finally read it, and I'm so glad I read it. Christina Lauren, you guys are so... I love your books. Now, probably the first book that I loved this year was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I don't think I've ever cried so much in a book like I have this book. I've got like videos of me absolutely bawling. I have an entire like rant in my journal about this book. Everything about this book was spectacular. I think this is probably my favourite Colleen Hoover read. It was so emotional. I mean, I'm not a crier. Like, I don't usually cry that much in books. But this one, I was absolutely sobbing my eyes out. Oh, it was so good. This book is about Kenna, and Kenna has been in jail for 5 years. And when she gets out, she wants to reconnect with her daughter. No one's really letting her near her daughter until she meets Ledger, who is sort of the only connection to her daughter that's really going to help her out. It's so good. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. I'm so going to reread this. Everyone needs to read this book. Trust me, read it. You'll cry. Now, on with the Colleen Hoover theme, I have Verity. I read this book in one sitting, which is something I usually never do. And this is my first and only thriller-esque book that I've read this year, or like probably read ever, to be honest. I'm more of a fantasy, like, romance book girl. But this book was so interesting to me. I wasn't, like, scared. Well, okay, maybe I was I don't really remember, but it was just so interesting to me, and the whole mental aspect and just being inside this woman's head and everything was just crazy. This book's about Lowen. Lowen gets asked to finish off Verity's book. So Verity's a very like popular, famous author, and she gets asked to stay in Verity's house and finish writing Verity's books. Like, I went into this not knowing what I was going to be reading. I was like surprised. It was an experience, to say the least. Even the first page, look at this first page. What kind of a first line is that? I don't know. But nevertheless, I thought this book was like creepy, but like the right amount of creepy. I don't know, I found it really interesting and I liked it, and it was something really different for me. It is something really different. It's not like my normal romance books that I read. I just want to put in here because I forgot to say it during the video, but for Verity, I am team manuscript. No one can tell me differently, but I haven't read the like extended chapter or whatever, the extra chapter epilogue thing in the special edition version. But at the moment, I am 100% team manuscript. Next book, which I forgot that I'd actually read this year, and I thought it was something I read last year, but It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This is my first and my favourite Tessa Bailey book ever. The romance in this, the grumpy sunshine, everything in this book was amazing, and I was so obsessed with this. Like, it's tabbed all the way through. I can't, it's so good. This book's about Piper and Brendan. Piper is a socialite, she's from LA, like she's an influencer and all that stuff, and Brendan is a fisherman in this small town, and one day Piper's stepdad is like, you're partying too much, you need to go and like experience real life, and sends her and her sister to this small fishing town for the summer to like live and get some real life experience. And obviously like they meet and everything comes from there. I think this book was so much more than a romance book, and there was like, I did not expect the spice that would come from this book. I did not expect the spice. It was so good. Everything. I mean, if you like Schitt's Creek, definitely read this, because she is based off of a Schitt's Creek character, I think, or like the whole thing's sort of Schitt's Creek based. I gave this book a 5 stars. I loved it. I loved it, I loved it, I loved it. But it wasn't even just a romance like Grumpy Sunshine. There was so much more in it. And there was no like third act breakup, which, well, I don't remember there being like a proper third act breakup. Read this. And then my next book, Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. Honestly, Lauren Asher is one of my favourite authors at this point. And as you can see, I loved this book. This was probably like my favourite book throughout the first half of this year. I loved it. This is the second book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. So the first one is the fine print, and then you have this, and then the third one, the final offer, is coming out next year. All 3 of these books, when their grandfather died, their grandfather left them like a task to complete before they can take their roles in the company. So this is about Declan and Iris, and before Declan can become CEO, he has to get married and have a baby. Iris is his assistant. So Declan and Iris, because he can't find anyone else to marry him, they get married. So this is marriage of convenience trope, which honestly is one of my favourite tropes. And I loved it in this book. I couldn't stop reading this book. I didn't even realise I'd tabbed this book so much. But it's so... But Declan was like the grumpy man. And Iris, I loved Iris. Lauren Asher is just brilliant. And if you want a new like different read, if you want a new read, definitely read the Dreamland Billionaire series. I'm currently rereading the fine print, and I forgot how much I love that book. And obviously I love this book so much more. Probably up there on one of my favourite books of the year. And now the last book in this list is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. I bought this book earlier this year, and I just read it one day because, I don't know, I think I just randomly picked it up. But I love this book. I think anything set in New York for me is brilliant. So this book is about Matt and Grace, and it's set in New York, and you get sort of past and present time periods. So you get the past in, I think it's, so you get that in the 90s when they like first met each other, like they first became friends, and the whole thing begins there, and then they spread apart, and then it jumps to like now time frame where they see each other at the train station, and he then tries to like get in touch with her. It's a second chance romance, which is probably one of my favourite things. This book is brilliant. I don't know if it was the New York setting or the past and present time periods, or just that you get like 2 different stories in this. You get the story of them when they first found love, and then them falling in love again in the future. I really love this book. Definitely read it. If you're thinking about picking it up, I definitely would. Okay, now that my camera's gonna die, I'm gonna have to do this really quickly. So those were all the books that I loved in 2022. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, do all that stuff. But I will hopefully see you in my next video. Don't know when it'll be. It'll be sometime in the new year, so Thank you so much for watching.